So this card is $100. This card is probably one of the better staples in years. And based on data from the recent YCS, out of 25 deck lists that have been acquired, this card has been played in all 25 of them in the top cut, including some decks where there were 2 of these cards. SP Little Knight is one of the better cards that were released in a very, very long time. Remember DPE, things like Verte, Dragoon, stuff like that? Those cards were game breaking, but this card just trumps everything. It power creeps a lot of the removal because it's so generic, so easy to get to. You can do it on your opponent's turn. And it also dodges the trap that can stop it. You can't even imperm this card, which is absolutely crazy. So it's $100. And this guy tweeted, of course, this is comedy, right? Because he eventually paid for this. But the shopping cart, the prices, the receipt from his latest TCG Marketplace order, which shows a $550 investment in Yu-Gi-Oh cards from the Age of Overlord set. And we see here 2 Little Knights bought at a little over the market price right now, almost $110, which is interesting. And I saw a lot of discourse on it on Twitter, and I decided to put in my 2 cents. And I also wanted to make this video to expand on it, to explain what I think about the situation, and kind of like shed a light on my view on cards being expensive. Let me quote myself here. Hobbies cost money, some more, others less. You can buy the cheap or expensive video game controller, the fishing rod, the hiking shoes, the cookware, the golf club, depending on what hobby you currently invest in. There are price ranges for every hobby, and you will usually get what you pay for. Spend what you can and enjoy. So my goal with this, and I'm kind of speaking freely, I did write notes, which I might get to later, but I do want to speak freely on the subject. I think that there are 2 ways of looking at this. One way is that hobbies don't need to make you money. Hobbies are not investments. Investments, you can go to the bank, you can put in some money in the stock market. If you want to invest as a collector, prices are the most important part of collecting and investing. The other part of it is sort of like prices being gatekeeping players from actually participating in events, winning events, purchasing these cards so they can have a chance, being at a disadvantage automatically because they don't have these types of cards. So there is, of course, the investment side of things when it comes to money, but there's also the playing and participating side of things where more expensive cards actually hurt. A lot of people in the comments of this, you can check out my Twitter link below if you want to see all the comments because there is a big discussion there. A lot of people mentioned that Konami maliciously puts these cards as secret rares and not as lower rarity cards in these sets, which is of course usually true, not all the time. I am definitely not defending Konami. People were saying that, you know, I'm tweeting this as Konami is pointing a gun to my head. This is definitely not the case, but Konami doesn't always 100% do that. It's true that Konami does short print cards a lot of the times, like when we're talking about the reprints for Forbidden Droplet. It wasn't easy to obtain, but sometimes you do get a realization that the prices, besides being affected by rarity, are also sometimes affected by supply and demand. Supply and demand is a very simple concept, right? A company creates a product. If there is more demand than the available supply of that product, the product's price should be higher because a lot more people want to buy it. So if 3 people want to buy one product, it should usually go to the highest bidder, right? It's not always the case. It's not always correct. But we did have a glimpse of meta-defining cards that were some of the best cards in the game. One of them is banned here, 2 of them are limited, and one of them should probably be banned. It is banned in the OCG, or at least limited or semi-limited. We did have Kashtira Fenrir as an Ultra, releasing at about $40 on release, which is very, very high for an Ultra Rare. We had a super rare Bestial Magnemite. Nobody thought that this card is going to be a super rare, right? But it was. It was about $20 for a super rare, which is something that has not happened in many, many, many years, right? Especially for a brand new card that just dropped. Kelbeck and the Shizu cards in Magnificent Mavens were probably, and are still probably, some of the best cards ever printed. The most insane cards that are, two of them are banned currently in the OCG, or maybe even more, but Kelbeck and Agito at least. They were intentionally released in an all ultra rare set. They were not short printed, and eventually on release, they cost about like a few bucks, $4 or $5, because they were good. Also, this Kid Kalos is, contentious. The card itself is extremely good. Obviously, Pearl Rhino was about $120 on release, right? Because everybody understood that this deck is crazy. Not on release, but a little bit later after the first YCS. But Kid Kalos itself could have been the secret, but it wasn't. So, on one hand, Konami does short print cards. They do print cards intentionally as secret rares. But don't forget, and this is obviously intentional, right? But don't forget there is an aspect of supply and demand here. Now, another aspect of supply and demand can be very easily visualized by just looking at the secret rares. It is true that not all secret rares are equal. It is true that one probably shines above all of them, but you do have some secret rares that are $1.50. You have some at $3. You have some at $50. You have some at $100. You have some at $2, right? It's not that secret rares are automatically expensive. It doesn't necessarily mean that, but I do agree with the comments mentioning on the thread that I showed that by initially printing it as a secret rare, you immediately cause an extreme increase in the price relative to what it was based on the rarity. And you can see that if we look specifically for Typhon here, right? It was printed as an ultra rare. It is a $20 ultra rare, which is way above everything else. However, this card would have probably been $50, $60 if it was printed as a secret rare. So first of all, I want to talk about SP Little Knight specifically. This is not the first time a card has been $100. There have been cards in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! That cost a lot more than that. However, you kind of have to understand that when it comes to cards like SP Little Knight, they are always going to be expensive relative to their rarity. If it's a secret rare, it goes to the top extreme of secret rares. If it's a super rare like Magnemite, it will go up there. I think one main point that I think is very correct, and it is probably what a lot of people are accusing Konami for, is not using the model used in the OCG today. So if you're not aware of OCG rarities, you usually have each card in multiple rarities, which means that you can get an SP Little Knight out of an Age of Overlord booster pack for example, super rare, right, for a lower price, but you could pull that card as an ultra, quarter century, collector, maybe ultimate rare, stuff like that. So you will have an option to max out and pay a lot of money, and actually those high-end rarity cards in the OCG, even if they have printings in lower rarity, they still cost a lot. But if you look at the super rare, which is the low rarity version of SP Little Knight currently in the TCG, it's around $20 to $30, right, which is still expensive, but is like 1/3 of the price in the TCG. So I think that is a valid comment for Konami. Use the OCG model and let more people pay as much as they possibly can for cards. On the other spectrum is that a lot of people on Twitter have also been saying that you don't need SP Little Knight that just showed up on the screen in order to play Yu-Gi-Oh! You don't need it. You can play a deck that doesn't run it. You can substitute it for different cards like IP Masquerena going into Nightmare Unicorn on your opponent's turn. That is a quick remove. It is much worse. And the reason why SP costs so much is that it's so much better than the current alternative, right? It does something very specific that you can do with cheaper cards, but it does it so much better. So first thing to conclude this topic, and of course I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below as always, Konami's rarity model in the OCG is better for budget players. It's better for players to go into the game and get better cards. Eventually, now, if you have a secret rare SP and that's it, it will prevent people from picking it up, which in turn will prevent them from doing relatively well in events to some extent, even though you can probably do pretty well at an event without it, but it does give you a significant advantage because somebody at your skill level playing SP will automatically have an advantage over you. We should not forget that Konami is a company that is for profit. An example for this, why it's relatively important to keep products relatively profitable for Konami vendors and shops, is the 2023 tins. We had a tweet from House of Champs a few days or weeks ago of just boxes and cases upon cases upon cases stuck because nobody wants to buy them. Nobody wants to buy them because the sets don't have value. On one hand, you're saying, hey, that's great. We have so many reprints of expensive cards now cheap. But on the other hand, stores and vendors are stuck with this product because it has no value. So think about that maybe on that direction. Another thing is that Konami's TCG model in terms of prices, sets, rarities, stuff like that will not change unless players take action. An example for that is the new EU YCS ticket prices that have doubled, and people still flocked to the event. I don't blame them for wanting to play, but I can guarantee you that some of the players who were clamoring over on Twitter that the prices are too high and they're not going to attend, eventually ended up attending. So if people boycotted YCS Dortmund because the prices were too high, I guarantee you prices would have probably gone down a little bit. And the last tip for you is, I respect everybody's financial status. It's all good. Sometimes I don't buy cards because they're too expensive. When I figure out I have no use for them. So if you're not hyper competitive, if you don't go to YCSs every other weekend, sit this one out. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. That is the best thing you can do as a consumer. If you buy it when you can't afford it, that creates a problem because then the prices will still go up. If we don't buy the things that we deem too expensive or wrong in the game, it will send a message to Konami that this is not acceptable for the players. Very contentious topic. I hope my opinions were relatively clear. I kind of mumbled on, but you know, this is just like a stream of consciousness. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. As always, like the video, subscribe, check out my sponsors in the link below. Follow me on Twitter for all these types of tweets in the future. If you do want to get into the discussion, this is the best place to do that. Of course, don't forget my sponsors and the Chainlink TCG Field Center, which is almost sold out. One of 100 serialized copies that will go out of stock forever, and you will have one unique copy to brag with your friends on about and support the channel. Peace.